This is a video that honestly I really don't want to make because I feel like the entire Clone Wars Adventures community is counting on me to pull this off, because if Daybreak Games doesn't agree with this idea, this is most likely the last straw for any hope of Clone Wars Adventures ever returning. So this video is going to be directed towards Daybreak Games, formerly known as Sony Online Entertainment, as well as the players of a game that existed a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away called Clone Wars Adventures. In December of 2010, after spotting an advertisement on StarWars.com for a game called Clone Wars Adventures, my 10-year-old self was quickly drawn to the homepage of a game that would soon greet me almost every single day for the next 4 years of my life. While it started out as something I would occasionally check up on every few days, it quickly became somewhat of an addiction for me. I would spend 12 to 14 hours a day in this virtual world that I considered to be a second home, developing relationships with new people and creating something that I would one day call my proudest achievement in my life. My squad, called Larkin Legion. I fell in love with the idea of leading a group of people that shared the common interest of Star Wars. I spent almost a fourth of my lifespan, if you think about it, building these relationships with this group of people who I now consider a second family. We were strong and we were powerful, and Larkin Legion was not a force to be reckoned with. And every day, my love for Clone Wars Adventures grew stronger. So I had spent basically 4 years of my life just having fun, having a great time, building these insane relationships that I will never forget with all these wonderful people. And then in January of 2014, Sony Online Entertainment announced that they were shutting down 4 MMOs, including Clone Wars Adventures, on March 31st of 2014, which was only 3 months later. In my opinion, not only was the game at its peak content-wise, but the player base had been steadily increasing since the game's launch. So I didn't understand why this was happening. Sony Online Entertainment's Senior Director of Global Communications, Michelle Cagle, said this regarding the game's shutdown. At Sony Online Entertainment, we are always evaluating our portfolio to ensure we're providing players with the best gameplay experiences. At times, as part of this commitment, we have to make the difficult decision to sunset a game so we can refocus our resources on other areas in the best interest of our company and player community. Now, picture this. Me sitting in my bedroom, January 2014. I can remember exactly how I felt when I read the headline of this article. There was this deep emptiness in my chest, and I had the same watery feeling in my mouth that you feel right before vomiting. And I didn't know whether to cry or to scream or to yell or to throw a fit. I mean, it was like they were taking away my childhood like it was nothing. And in my head I was like, okay, this has to be some sort of elaborate prank or joke or something. I mean, the shutdown date of the game was a day before April Fool's Day. I mean, it has to be a joke, right? But it wasn't a joke, and the day came and it was gone. It's like they put it down like it was some sort of rabid animal. I mean, it felt surreal in the most awful way. I mean, you can only imagine. I literally spent the better part of the next 2 weeks just crying myself to sleep at night at the thought that, those 4 years of my life that I had poured my hard work and my creativity into, not to mention thousands upon thousands of dollars, were just gone, and there was nothing that I could do to prevent that from happening. And, all these connections and relationships that I had established over those 4 years no longer existed because of an executive decision by Sony Online Entertainment. So, aside from the emotional rundown of my childhood being ripped away from me, here's my point. I and millions of other people want to play Clone Wars Adventures again. And trust me, I'm very aware of the countless amounts of petitions and supposed emulators that have just been overlooked by Daybreak Games, but the community of Clone Wars Adventures truly does have the power to make this happen. Ultimately, the decision is up to Daybreak Games, formerly known as Sony Online Entertainment, but there are steps that we as a community can take to ensure that they at least give it a second thought. And I don't pretend to understand what goes into developing or running a game as large as Clone Wars Adventures, but I do believe that one of the largest factors that comes into play when deciding to pull the plug on a game is how much revenue is being made from the game and how much money is being put into the game. With all that in mind, this is what I propose. All that we want and all that we need as players of Clone Wars Adventures is for the game's servers to simply be turned back on, right? I mean, we can manage without updates or bug fixes or even developer support, and cutting those things would make it substantially cheaper to run a game like Clone Wars Adventures. So therefore, I have created a GoFundMe page dedicated to funding the servers for Clone Wars Adventures. And I understand that this may not even make a dent in the total amount required to run a game like this, but at the very least, it'll show that we as a community are dedicated to bringing our game back. So listen, if you have a few dollars to spare, or you were once a player of Clone Wars Adventures, please consider donating, and I will also be matching every single donation out of my own pocket as well, if that creates any more additional incentive to donate. Because in the end, all that it comes down to is money. No matter how Daybreak Games words it, I mean, if they were making enough revenue off of Clone Wars Adventures and the other MMOs that were shut down, those games would obviously still be up right now. So this is my advice to Daybreak Games if they happen to be watching this video. Charge a standard fee just to be able to play the game. Just like any other AAA title, don't allow free-to-play users. Therefore, any of the 10 million registered users who want to return to their childhood memories are forced to pay. This creates additional revenue aside from Jedi membership and station cash purchases. I mean, at least give it a second thought after watching this video. I understand that I'm only a single player, but I speak for the entire Clone Wars Adventures community when I say that we want this game back. So, Daybreak Games, tell us what we need to do to play Clone Wars Adventures again, and we will make it happen. As I said before, it all comes down to money in the end. People do tend to compare Clone Wars Adventures to other games such as Star Wars The Old Republic or Star Wars Battlefront, and while on paper Clone Wars Adventures was never considered a great game, but the players really understood what made Clone Wars Adventures such an amazing experience, and that is something that no other game will ever be able to recreate. So please, Daybreak Games, we beg you to consider reviving this game for us. Even if it's only for an extended period of time, being able to relive our childhood memories and continue our adventures on this wonderful game is something that we can only pray for, and you have the power to make it happen. Thank you.